Recording. Okay, right. By way of the agenda, the first agenda item is the approval of the meetings of the previous minutes. So here on the screen, there is the meeting notes of the previous minute. I recall that I saw an email coming out about announcing that the meeting minutes, draft meeting minutes, is available for members' review. Have I remembered it correctly?
Yes, that email went out last week.
Yep. So, all right. Assuming my screen is doing funny things. So assuming that everyone has a chance to peruse the meeting minutes, so by scrolling through, it doesn't do any justice for anyone who wants to read. Assuming that we all have a chance to read it, can I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes as the official record of the meeting?
I'll move that, Stephen. Oh, go ahead.
I'm happy to second Brett.
Okay.
Wait a second.
Brett not moved, and Jane a second. So that's what I heard in order of voices. Okay, so let's go on a vote for the approval process. Landon has come in. So can someone help me to launch a poll?
I might be able to do it,
Otherwise, I will.
Stephen.
Thank you.
There we go.
All right. For those who are hosts, I saw Brett, you as a host. So in that case, then you won't be able to vote. So
Yeah.
If you want to add your vote to that after we have the final vote, then we'll do the final counting. So
I'm affirmative. Yeah.
great. At the moment, we have 2 abstains, and 6 affirmative, plus Brett will be 7 affirmative. Assuming that there is no more votes coming in, we can end the poll now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thanks, everyone.
Sorry, Brett.
Yep. No, that's good.
Okay. All right.
Seven
So we
and
have
2 abstentions. Yeah.
7 for affirmative and 2 abstains, and I don't vote, so the motion is carried. All right. Okay. So that's taken care of the first order of the meeting agenda. The second is that if you have a chance to look at my screen is doing something funny. So if you have a chance to look through the agenda, then we have a number of items up here. So we have updates for the group, and also we have 4 needs for consideration. And then I don't see Ruben coming in as yet, so we won't probably.
Ruben said he would be 30 minutes late to this meeting.
Okay. All right. So when he comes in, then we will get onto the 6 parameters for clinical use items. So anyone has any suggestions to change or add anything or delete anything on the agenda as you can see on the screen? Okay, hearing none, let's go to the second item of business updates. Mid-year project check-in. I believe that that's an item that Daniel, you want to lead the discussions. So over to you.
Yeah, I do. So in the FHIR Work Group, we did a mid-year project check-in where we asked all the active projects to come and say where they were at about mid-year. We did that last year. I think that was really good, and we'd like to do that again this year. What we need to do is pick a date. Now, That would typically be maybe our next meeting on the 16th of July. But I just wanted to flag, though, that it might be better for us to do it later because, of course, we're coming into making all these change requests for ballot, and there look to be a number of things that need to go on the agenda that take priority. So I think that even though it's meant to be a mid-year project check-in, we should probably actually look to do it on the 13th of August because that's after the ballot snapshots are generated. So content closure will have happened for all the specifications. I think that's the safest point, which allows kind of that 30th of July to be whatever else we need to be doing to help ballot happen. I don't know. What are people's thoughts? Is that too late? Does that make sense?
I would appreciate that.
Yeah, so
Let's say that.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable and good propositions to sort of table it for the 13th of August for that mid-year review and check-in.
All right. Well, if there are no objections to that, then we'll take that as that's our best date so far, and we can send out comms. So the FHIR Work Group co-chairs will send out comms to the active projects to say, look, this is the nominal date that we'd like you to come in and do a mid-year project check-in, please.
Yep, sounds like a good plan.
All righty. Let's put that
let's-
action on me.
Yep. Okay, cool. All right, so we have an action item on Daniel on this first bullet point, then updates for the actions holding over from the previous meetings. We don't have Andy here today, so is the first sub-bullet point still going to be deferred until we have Andy here, Daniel?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, all right, so we'll defer that. The second is about medication active ingredient strength and guidance. Marika has presented something at the previous meeting, and we have some discussions on that. Do we still need to have further discussions, or are we happy for Marika to present sort of the final position to close out this action item?
We actually already voted last time to accept the proposal, and so
Yep.
raised a PR against space, which Tishy is in the middle of reviewing.
Okay.
We've been going back and forward with changes at the moment. It's down to like punctuation and small tweaks. So
Okay.
that's progressing. Is there anything you wanted to add, Danielle? I heard you come off mic.
Yeah, I did. I think this is a copy pasta error. I think this is just like copied from the last meeting. I think it's done from that last meeting.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. So either we update this action item to pending final pull request and finalization, or we just mark it as complete and take it off the action item.
Yeah, just mark it as done. The action was bring a proposal. We brought a proposal.
Yep.
We put on that. So
Okay. So we can mark it as done, and so it doesn't need to reappear in the next meeting minutes as outstanding action. All right, the final point action item will be on Richard. Richard, I saw that you came into this call, so do you have an update for us?
No, he's left. He put a comment in the chat that he had to go, so he's not here.
Okay. Right. Apology, I couldn't see the chat sort of on my screen, given that I'm sharing. So, okay. All right. Given that Richard has to leave, or he has actually left, so we'll hold it off to the next meeting and see whether or not he has any update for us. All right. That being done, updates all clear, and then we have 4 NIPs to process. Danielle, are you taking lead on each one of them, or is there someone
No,
else?
I'll do core and patient summary, and
Yep.
Brett will do base, and I
Yep.
think Michael Wilson, your eRec.
yes, yep.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So in that case, then let's sort of do the 2 that are you responsible for providing updates. So you do the core and PS, is that right? Oh, sorry, base and PS. And
No, I'm doing
then-
core and PS. We could always
Yeah.
go base
Oh.
first and get
Yeah.
Brett to do it.
Okay,
I'll do it.
sure, right. All right, Brett,
Yeah.
over to you. Do you want me to share or do you want me to stop?
Yeah,
and
you
then
might as well
share?
share because it's only 2 pages.
Okay,
Cool.
all right.
Yeah, cool. And I'm going to frame it a bit too because, yes, just we're here again looking at notice of intent to ballot. So basically this is a check that the basic criteria are being met for all these specs to go to ballot. So mainly these are things related to some of the
Let me
content.
know if you want me to scroll.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, we could scroll down to the grid. Beautiful. So yeah, so basically AE base, you are probably very familiar with this. So we have our intent there to work to release the release 600, which will supersede the previously published working standard 500. So that is to go to ballot and for working standard and for the August ballot cycle. So we're responsible for that. So it's our decision to go forward with that. So the main things are the declarations. We have to provide when going to ballot. So for working standard, we have to complete our past ballot reconciliation, which we have done. So we've gone through that completely. And published. The variance statement requirement is not required for AE base because we don't we are the definitional standard, so we don't have to provide one. And we need to do the other main thing is to ensure our intended maturity model levels have been assessed or planned to be assessed. So they've been, we have a slot requested on the 16th to go through our FMM levels. So that will be rounding up last changes with an intent to bring some of those things through to FMM1. If you have any driving needs to get anything to FMM1, it has to be done and dusted and included in the build before then. So I think we have a list of things already planned, but that will be the requirement. So other than that, we have already some FMM levels established for a number of other things. Danielle.
I just wanted to, for people on the line, just to clarify the before then, because it sounded like it was like before the 16th, but I think that's not what you mean. What you mean is it has to be done and dusted before the ballot snapshot. So your opportunities are
Yes.
the 16th or leaving it to the super last moment, which I think is we've got the meeting on the 30th of July.
Yeah,
Yep,
that is
that's
true.
what I recall.
Yeah, I mean because basically we do plan to do that review on the 16th for the things that we have planned on. But yeah, it's I think that will be our main check. So we have requested to get we do have a number of items to go from 0 to FMM1. So they will be the main things we'll be looking at in that meeting for AE base. Yeah,
All
that's
right.
about all there is to say, really.
Yep. Anyone
We've
has
met
any
the criteria.
questions and comments for Brett?
Is there anything more if you scroll down, Steve?
No, there's nothing more.
Oh, okay.
I did scroll down and that's it.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, I don't have any comments. Or that fine.
Okay. Anyone else has any comments or any questions for Brett? All right. If not, then I'll entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we accept the nib. So AE
Yep.
base may be published.
Thank you. And can I have a seconder?
I'll second. It's Ruben.
Thank you, Ruben. All right. Brett, can you launch the vote for me? Thank you.
While the vote comes up, quick process question. So only 2 CSIRO peeps are designated voters. Is it better if I don't vote at all, or is it better if I do abstain? Because I'm not one of the designated voters.
I don't think that you need to abstain.
Okay.
But I think that it's up to you because the abstain number doesn't skew the decision unless we have a large number of abstains. At the
Okay.
moment, we have only 1 abstain. So if you add yours to the abstain, you won't really change anything. So we have 7 affirmative.
Yeah, I hadn't been voting at all, and I just thought I'll check that.
That will be fine. Procedurally, if there are a lot of abstain, then I'm happy to entertain you putting in abstain because that would sort of put a off balance to the total number. But now, given that it's only 1 abstain, I don't think that it really matters.
Mhm.
All right. So if there is no further votes coming in, we have 7 affirmative, 1 abstain. Brett,
Oh, I got
have
a
you
plus.
added in yours?
Yeah, I'm a +1.
Okay,
Plus
so
that,
then there
yeah.
will be 8 affirmative, 1 abstain, and motion carried. All right. Okay. All right. We are done with this one. And the next 2 will be on Daniel to lead.
Yep, same process. I think we can just bring this up. It's a
Yep.
core. Let's pop down. So this
Just
will
make sure we
be
don't have anything else. So that's all in this page, on this
awesome.
page.
So this is I've got a typo in the proposed ballot name. Okay, I'll fix that and send that through. I've left one of the arrow brackets in there. Sorry about that. Right. So ballot for working standard again, superseding 100. Also for the same time frame. Of interest for prereqs. Yes, we've fully completed ballot reconciliation and applied it from the last one. We did that when we published 100. Our variance statement is there. Do we want to actually go to it and have a look? I mean, it is the same but updated version. So there is no variance. There's no changes to that. The additional content that is being balloted this time all have an AU-based profile, like healthcare service, medication statement, and related person, and all of those have no variance from base. So it is the same statement, although we've added additional content.
So if members wants to have a look, then can you pop the link into the chat so therefore I can bring it
Oh, it's
up?
right there. You can click on it. See FHIR RG
where?
AU variance
That one?
statement. No, scroll up. Yeah, that one.
That one.
That's the
Okay.
one. That should
Cool.
work.
All right. Okay.
So there it
that-
is. That's what it looks like. The only thing that's changed on that page is underneath the heading 371 variance from AU base, we have updated the version number to be the current version number because it still holds true. We have no variance from base.
All right. So I think that's all good. Oh, my machine is having a
Having a moment.
failure. All right. Anyway, okay. Let's back to this one. All right.
Yep.
There we are.
Okay, maturity model. Yes, plus requested. Now, this is when I submitted the notice of intention to Ballot. I thought that we would be coming under the 16th meeting, the next one, but we've actually passed in our last AU Core TDG. So we've submitted our JIRA for consideration for endorsement by the FHIR Work Group in this meeting, in fact, for AFMM 1. So it's requested, but that's actually been brought forward to this meeting to have a look at. I don't think I really need to change the nib though.
Yeah, I don't think so. We will have the minutes content in the updated minutes to reflect that, so that link will still be valid.
All right, sounds good. Backwards compatible? No. Neither AU base is backwards compatible, nor is AU core. AU core is viewed as non-backwards compatible, not because of profile only, but because we have profile plus interaction support. And part of our requirements now that we've added on, we now have AU core profiles for resources that were allowed to be used before. And so that's being viewed as being potentially backwards incompatible. It's still possible that people are compatible going forwards, but it's not a certainty that their earlier implementations are compatible. So we're tagging this as a no. Any questions about that one? I can give you an example if you'd like.
All right, I don't hear any questions, or I haven't seen any hands up.
All right. Any other questions about this?
Any other questions or comments? All right, I've heard nothing, so I'm happy to entertain a motion.
I'm assuming since I'm not voting, someone else should motion?
No, you can motion.
Oh, okay. Then I motion we approve the AU Core R2 notice of intention to ballot.
Yeah, it's just that you don't vote, and that's fine. Yep. All right. Daniel motion it. Anyone wants to second?
I'm happy to second Marika.
Okay, thank you, Marika. So we have a motion on the table. We have a second. If there's no further discussions, then we can launch the vote. All right.
And I'm a +1, Stephen, for
Yeah.
affirmative.
Okay. At the moment, we have okay, 7 coming up. All right. So, 8. All right, coming up. All right. I think we probably have reached a stable number, so that we have 9 affirmative and 1 abstain. Motion carried. Thank you. All right. Then the next one is the AUPS.
Indeed. Okay. So this is patient summary. This is its first ballot. So I think what's of relevance here is this is for comment, not for working standard. Same target ballot period. So what's really relevant here, of course, is there's not applicable for past ballot reconciliation. This is our first go. We do have a variance statement. We can go to it in a second. And just to have a look, we're claiming there's no variance. Other things that are worth noting is we are not, we have no assessment of FHIR maturity model level. I mean, everything is at draft 0, but for comment, it's not a prerequisite to put content to AFMM 1 or higher. And we would like to undertake that assessment post reconciliation of ballot for comment feedback before we assess that something is like fully appropriate and has no errors. And backwards compatible is not applicable because, again, we've never released this before. Should we just pop now to that variance statement, Stephen?
Yep, here we are.
Cool. So what's on this page is, again, AU base, no variance, noting we actually have an additional profiled resource of bundle that's not in base. And in terms of variance from core, we have no variance, which isn't surprising. We're using derivation from core, which derives from base. There are 2 additionally profiled resources here, which are bundle and composition, and AU core doesn't have either of those. We've also got a variance from IPS. We added this. I think this will migrate. Our intention, and I guess we don't need this approved for notice of intent to ballot, but it's a good time to kind of raise out of the IG Council from Madrid. There's kind of this idea of it being a policy around IPS and jurisdictional localizations, and asking that where you have a patient summary, you're clear on if you are going to be conformant to, or sorry, I think it's based on IPS, and any concerns about how does an international work when they're localized, and a couple of other factors. So we'll be looking to include those pages in our patient summary document, and we will probably move the current content we've got about variance from IPS off into there with a much wider discussion that addresses those aspects.
All right. Back to here.
Yeah, any questions or comments on this one?
All right, I haven't heard any, so we can entertain a motion.
Then I'll motion to approve the OU patient summary notice of intent to ballot.
Thank you, Daniel. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Jane. So we have a motion on the table. We have a seconder. If we don't have further comments or questions, we can go to vote. All right, here we are. All right, I think we have reached the similar numbers as for last one. So we have 9 affirmative plus Brett, which will be 9 affirmative including Brett, and we have 1 abstain. So motion carried. All right. Okay, so that's done with the 2 NIPs that Daniel has taken us through. Michael Wilson, are you ready for this one?
Yeah, I'm ready. We know what we're doing now.
Yep. So I'll
The
scroll
second
down
page.
to the second page.
Yep. So this is the eRequesting notice of intent to ballot. We're going for ballot for working standard. This is our first time for working standard, so it doesn't supersede anything. Same ballot period as the others, Q3. So the past ballot reconciliation, so we ran a ballot for comment last year that's been completed. And then we have a variance statement as well, which we'll go to in a second. And we're requesting the fire maturity model assessment at the next FHIR Work Group on the 16th. So that's going to go through the eRequesting TDG tomorrow. So all going well on that. We'll be looking to take everything to AFMM 1 and then bring it to the FHIR Work Group on the 16th.
So you want me to look at this one?
Yep. So again, we're claiming that we have no variance from AU base and AU core, but we haven't profiled additional resources. And we've listed those out there under communication request, consent, document reference, task, and then some extensions and a search parameter. So that's the same list in both. They're all additional that aren't in AU base or AU core. Happy to take any questions on any of those if anyone has anything.
Okay. Do members have any questions on the variance statements or in the NIP itself? All right, I don't see any hands up. I haven't heard anything about questions or comments, so I'm happy to entertain a motion.
Yeah, well, I'd like to motion that we.
Oh, hang on, Daniel.
Sorry.
Daniel, last
Daniel.
second.
Yeah, it's not a question, it's a comment. I do think the search parameter shouldn't live in eRequesting. I think because it's a native element in FHIR. I don't think it's just restricted to eRequesting. So that would be one thing that I would want to see not live in eRequesting, and that we don't make everyone that profiles this do it differently. So I think it belongs in base, but that's my only comment on the variant statement. I think it's a good variant statement. It makes clear what's in place.
Yep, noted. I think that's a good comment. I mean, that shows the point of the variant statement, I believe. So we have listed it in there because that's where the search parameter does currently sit. So I think that shows that this sort of variant statement works, that it can call out, hang on, why is that there? Should it really be there? We're aware of that. There is a JIRA we're going to hopefully discuss tomorrow in eRequesting to suggest referring to the FHIR Work Group for inclusion in AU base or moving that to AU base. So that is going to be discussed tomorrow, and pending that outcome, we'll look to refer it to FHIR Work Group for inclusion in base.
All right. So with that as a friendly amendment, then sorry.
I don't know that it is a friendly amendment. I think it's just it was a note, because as it stands at the moment, it is a variation. But we will look to resolve that variation, I think.
Okay.
But if nothing happens, it will remain a variation. So I don't think there's any change to happen now, but we'll go through the process and see if we will move that to AU base. But as it stands right now, it is a variation.
All right. With that
once
as
it's
a note,
not, we will remove it.
all right. With that as a note, an action item, then are there any further questions or comments? Okay, if not, then happy to entertain a motion again.
Yep. So I'm happy to motion that we accept this AU requesting a notice of intent to ballot.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Can I have a seconder?
Happy to second, Leon.
Thank you, Jane. So we have a motion on the table. We have a seconder. Any other discussions or questions? If not, then we'll go to vote. Thank you, Brett. Why do we have one less? Never mind. We still reach the affirmative vote to support the motion. Now we have the full numbers. So we have 9 affirmative. We have 1 abstain. Motion carried.
Just for the minutes I'll put in the chat the JIRA on that search parameter that will just be discussed at eRequesting TG tomorrow. If we agree, I'll create another one for the FHIR Work Group.
Sounds good.
So I
Thank you.
assume, so just talking timings then, we'd want to get that across into the 16th meeting for the FHIR Work Group, because things have to be published before we can then assess that they're AFMM1. And if they're not AFMM1, they don't go in. So if you need it, I reckon that's probably our pathway.
Correct. So that's the plan. We go through it tomorrow in TDG. I'll immediately request an agenda item FHIR Work Group for the next meeting.
All right, that closes all the NIP items that we have processed through. So the next will be on this JIRA ticket. Any takers on this one to lead us on the discussions?
Oh yeah, okay, yep.
All right.
Righto.
This thing is very annoying.
There's 3 new structures, 3 new FHIR artifacts added to AU Core, and they're these 3 profiles. They're the only new structures we added, actually. So that's AU Core related person, AU Core Healthcare Service and AU Core Medication Statement. So they've been in there for a while. A couple of them have gone through several connectathons and testing events. AU Core Healthcare Service is the latest child, and it's really only gone through the testing event. But really, post-testing event, we had an assessment in our last meeting to agree on whether or not we thought these were AFMM 1. Everyone's moved to do that. There's really only one item of interest. So there's no warnings or errors for everything, but as you scroll down, AU Core Medication Statement. Now, I think it's probably worth spending a little bit of time here, because this is going to come up for all the AU-based things that will come up for eRequesting on this warning. Although I could ask you guys to just endorse this anyway, but we could also just take a couple of minutes to look at this one in particular, because we're going to need to approve it for the AU-based FMM ones and the eRequesting FMM ones anyway. I don't know. What's the thoughts?
So you want to have a look at the warning?
I think it's probably worth doing. We could go to the AU-based QA report and you'll see it across the shop. It's kind of everywhere at the moment because it's a new warning added from IG Publisher, and it's so if you go to the AU-based QA, for example.
Do you have a link for me to go to?
Or I'll just pop it in the chat.
Yep, thanks. That would be good.
I'll just say that as well. We're seeing it in eRequesting. So yeah, if we do address it now in this meeting, we can refer back to that when it comes up.
Exactly. I figured it'll
Cheers.
save us all time if we do it now.
Yeah.
So if you can go to that one in the chat, Steve.
This is the one.
Stephen, the QA in the chat. Yep.
Yep.
Or actually, since you're not sharing, why don't I? That's
Well, I'm
probably
happy for
easier.
you to. Yeah, I'm happy for you to share and drive it. It's
right,
easier than me following the.
I sent a request. Can I?
Should be okay.
Okay. Yes. Good. Now,
Yep.
people can see that.
Yep.
Let me know if you can. All right, I'm just going to go to canonical. So one of the recent changes in IG Publisher is around, I guess, kind of best practice and some of the issues that implementers downstream are facing when they're trying to resolve which version for unversioned canonical URLs. So for profiles, for extensions, for terminology, if you've said my reference is an unversioned canonical URL. In other words, what you're saying is give me the latest, because that's the pathway to record. Please resolve to the latest you have is to provide the canonical URL rather than specify a specific version. What this is doing in practice is obviously for a whole number of downstream things, and tooling can often be really difficult to resolve. So there's been a bit of a warning and some new moves to some capabilities to get more specific. So everywhere now, you'll kind of see this pin canonical come up. So you can see it on AU diagnostic request, and it's actually coming up for the fact that there's an extension here. And what we're really seeing these is because of R4. So terminology and extensions used to be all bundled into the FHIR standard and published that way in R4. So that's this 401. But then they were moved out into THO, and they were also moved out into the extensions pack. So when a server or a system is trying to resolve which extension version did you want, because I now have both the thing published in the FHIR standard and I also have available to me the latest extension. So that's what this is calling out. And you're going to see these warnings crop up for all the terminology, all the extensions that were published in R4. So it's not an error. It's flagging this And it's also flagging this because there are moves to add in new ways to provide clearer direction to downstream tooling. There's two things that are coming. One is the IG parameter pin canonicals, where you can use an IG parameter to globally decide your pinning. You can say like pin all or pin none. This isn't what we're going to do in AU base and core, because we've intentionally unversioned our terminology and so forth to be the very latest. One of the things that was in the JIRA, and I don't have it on me, I can go to it, the JIRA that we're looking at, is that there is a proposal for a way to do that. So Graham and a bunch of other people are working through how, instead of just using an unversioned canonical URL, which is the current accepted way to say, I want you to resolve to whatever latest you have, whatever's available on your server, that you do down here, choosing the latest here. This is what's coming, or potentially what's coming. I saw a comment from Michael Lawley, I think this morning or yesterday, saying, oh, I don't know about this format. This isn't available in tooling yet. So at the moment, we're getting all these warnings. When there has been some tooling agreement on exactly how we are clear in our references to this behavior of most recent version applies, we should look at updating that. I don't know how far off this is. They're still working through what the format is. So that's why those warnings are there and what they mean. Any questions about that one?
Yeah, just to clarify that pipe and version, that's not how you pass version and a URL to a value set. So you've got to do it with like a version parameter. So that's why Michael was querying that.
Let's go down to it. Go down, and because that one was on extension. And yes, there are different ways to do it in terminology. It's still kind of calling out the same warning at the moment. And yet Michael is raising that terminology's already made some strides in this space, and it's different to what was proposed. Find a terminology one. They'll be around. Oh, I think they should be all at the end, shouldn't they? The canonical group. Here we go. It's all about extensions. But yeah, that was a good point, Michael, that's one of the factors around working through a way to do this, and whether that splits up how we reference extensions versus how we reference terminology, or whether we can find a consistent way to do both. All right, so that's essentially the warning we're seeing here. And this was accepted in AU core, and I would suggest that we actually accept the pin canonical warning in as the FHIR Work Group, that we accept these warnings, and that we apply that also to AU base, that we just accept that this is a warning that does not mean there's an error in the structures. That's my proposal.
All right, anyone has any comments or objections to that?
Can we just broaden that to all AU IGs?
Yeah.
We can say that the FHIR Work Group accepts, so let me try to word a motion, that the FHIR Work Group accepts the current pin canonicals warning that is triggered by unversioned canonical URL references as something that we can accept for all HL7 AUIGs.
That sounds good.
Okay, Lucy, have you captured the motion in full?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right, so any seconder?
Brett
Can
here, I'll
I-
second.
Okay, thank you, Brett. So we have a motion clearly stated and documented, and we have a second. All right. Any other questions, comments, discussions? It doesn't look that we have any further conversation on this one.
So can I
we-
then motion? Oh, okay, sorry, because I now need to motion the FHIR, the JIRA for accepting the AU core issue. So I'd like to ask the FHIR Work Group to endorse FHIR 51081 for the AFMM1 for AU core related person medication statement and healthcare service.
Can we do two motions? Because we have one.
Yeah, I thought that we.
No,
Yeah.
I motioned to accept that warning across all HL7A UIGs. That wasn't the same thing as endorsing AFMM1 for 3 structures. They're 2
Yeah,
separate things.
I understand that. So the point is that I think Brett and my point is that we do that as 2 motions, or you want to
Okay.
roll them into one. All right.
No, you're right. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So let's deal with the first motion first before we come to a motion on this JIRA ticket. So we have that clearly documented. We have Brett seconded. Any further conversations, discussions, questions? If not, Brett, can you please launch the vote? All right, we have 7 affirmative on the voting card and 2 abstain. And if we add Brett to that, assuming Brett you are affirmative, yes, I saw
did,
the.
Yep.
All right, so we have 8 affirmative and 2 abstains. Motion carried. All right, so that's that one. Danielle, you want to make a second motion on this JIRA ticket?
I do. Are you happy to share again, or did you want me to?
Sure, no, I'm happy to share again. Let
Okay.
me find that JIRA ticket and then I can share. All right, there we go.
Okay, I motion we endorse AFMM1 as per FHIR 51081.
All right, which is this JIRA ticket.
That's right.
Yep. All right. Seconder, please.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Josh.
Could we get someone else?
yeah, I
not
thought-
from Cyro to
yep.
second.
Happy
That's-
to second, Landon Riley.
Okay, thank you, Landon. All right, we have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussions or questions? Okay, hearing none, let's launch the vote. Thank you, Brett. Okay, it looks like that we are stable at us. Okay, oh no, step too early. So now we have I assume Brett, you are affirmative. So we have 8
Yep.
affirmative and 2 abstain, and a motion carried. All right, so that's that. Done. We come back to the agenda item, which is for an item for on 6 parameters for clinical use. Ruben, are you still online?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, do you want to take us through on these discussions?
Sure. If
You
you
have
would
something
allow
to
me,
share?
Yeah, I do. So if I
Okay.
can have the screen, I'll try and get that up. It looks like I might be able to.
Yeah, you should be able to. There's nothing to stop you from that. Yep.
Hold on.
Okay. Yep.
Can someone confirm they're seeing what I'm sharing?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right. How much time do I have, Stephen? I don't want to keep anyone.
You have plenty of time. We don't. This will be the second last item. So you
And how
probably.
much time do you need for the last item, I guess, then is the question.
Michael, is it
How long's a piece
on
of
you?
string? Depends on how much in the weeds we go. So yeah.
All right. I'm
How
gonna
about we time box it for 15 minutes for
Yeah,
your discussion? Yeah.
I think that will be as much as I need, and
Yeah.
might even be less if I don't have
All
to
right.
explain
So
what
let's time box
FHIR is.
15 minutes for you.
All right. Thanks, Stephen, and hi, everyone. So this is, I guess, the long-standing item which we've been sort of touching on briefly in previous FHIR Work Group meetings. Finally, I've got my act together and actually come up with a proposal that's eventuated out of all of this. At a high level, what this is about is seeking to, I guess, get the work group's view on whether it would be a good idea to introduce sex parameters for clinical use from the HL7 International Gender Harmony Project and the FHIR Extensions Pack as something more explicit in AU base, and we'll get around what problem that's trying to address. All right, next slide. All right, so I'm not sure who here is not familiar with sex parameter for clinical use, so I've created some slides to just provide a brief overview. Is there anyone that's not familiar with it and needs me to just give a quick explanation of what it is, or if anyone that is partially familiar would like an explanation of what it is? I think that's pretty key to understanding the proposal. Hands up if anyone would like me to go through it quickly.
I haven't seen any hands up, Ruben, so take it away.
Okay, I'm going to assume everyone's happy then. All I'll say then is that, and I'm happy to share the slide deck for anyone that wants to read this afterwards. The key things to know about sex parameter for clinical use is that it's very much specific. It's a sex category specifically provided to inform a particular clinical use, to inform how a particular clinical activity is carried out. So think things like reference ranges, which are informed by someone's physical sex or a medication prescription, things of that sort. The way it's been modeled and designed in the Gender Harmony Project and implementation guide is that this primarily comes from clinicians and not the patients, because it's used to inform clinical care. And some pretty obvious use cases here would be things like a female to male transgender patient early in transition undergoing imaging, whereas the device requires selection of either M or F, male or female. To complete the setup would benefit from an imaging context-specific sex parameter for clinical use value, noting that the patient needs to be set up for female typical. All right, so that's really what it is. Moving forward, these are the attributes in the way it's been modeled in the FHIR extension, which is part of the extensions pack, and that extension is curated by the Patient Administration Work Group in HL7 International. The key thing in there is the value, which is a codable concept, and that codable concept is mandatory and has a required binding to the sex parameter for clinical use value set, which sits in THO and has an underpinning code system, which is also in THO. There's a period, which is optional if you want to specify when this is relevant for. There's a comment, and this is one to bear in mind because I'll touch on this later, which provides further explanation about the particular SPC value, the intention, or the context of use for the sex parameter. And finally, you can have 0 or more supporting info attributes, which can be codable concepts or references. And this is just what evidence or documentation was used to determine what the sex parameter was. So things like potentially genetic tests or an organ inventory, things like that, or what you'd expect to be linked at or asserted as supporting info.
Sorry,
Yep.
Ruben, can you go back to the previous slide? The binding strength is required binding. Is
Yes.
my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that for required binding, the value set has gone through quite considerable implementation, and the standards group is pretty happy about its use. My understanding is that this extension is not quite extensively used. So why is it being set to require binding instead of, say, for example, prefer binding
So
or extensible binding?
A required binding does not imply considerable implementation. What it implies is that the element can only be populated with members from the bound value set. That's all. Even things that are in early stage standards development process can have required bindings. And in fact, the patient.gender element has a required binding in FHIR, and it's been like that from the beginning. It's not indicating implementation experience. It's simply saying you can't have any other values in this element.
Okay, I might have to go back and reread the binding strength statement. I thought that I've seen something like that in the past when I went through the binding strength statement. So, okay, let's move on.
Thanks. All right, just to refresh everyone on that particular value set and code system, these are the members of that. So there is apply female typical setting or reference range, apply male typical setting or reference range, or specified. And I guess the interesting one here is specified. And that is really when you're in a situation where your available data, whatever form that is undefined or not aligned with sex-derived reference populations. So unfortunately, medicine over the last few centuries has been pretty much predicated on what's typical for a male body or a female body. And we know that there are individuals, they may be a minority, but they certainly exist, that don't match what's typical for a male body or a female body. And it's for those individuals that this value may be appropriate. Right, so onto the proposal, and there is a JIRA ticket which covers a lot of this. I've got a QR code and a short form URL there, and that's what I'm discussing today. So firstly, the problem statement. So I think mainly for me, this is really about standardization in FHIR. What we have clearly seen evidence of is that AU base is extremely pervasive and becoming increasingly pervasive. And that's a wonderful thing because AU base is a balloted standard driven by consensus, and thus becomes a great vehicle for getting some level of standardization in our community. Now, hand in hand with that, SPU is already starting to see adoption in Australia. It's been included in the eRequesting implementation guide. And I'm also hearing about lots of interest from jurisdictions that are clearly recognizing the need for this, mainly because everyone is slowly but surely accepting the fact that sex assigned at birth is not always reliable. And something like this would very much clarify what clinicians need to do when a sex parameter is relevant to providing care. So my contention is that without some clear guidance and consensus-based approaches, like what we could provide in AU-based, it is very conceivable that adoption of either SPCU itself or similar things will take various approaches, leading to, once again, a lack of interoperability and, sadly, a missed opportunity to get it right. So my proposal is that we address this problem statement by introducing SPCU in AU base. And I'm really I suppose at this initial stage, I'm not really keen on making anything mandatory or going too overboard, but at least recognizing the existence of this thing and providing some guidance and including it where it makes sense. So the first part of this proposal is to add the extension to profiles when there is a very clear clinical context. This is just my short list. There may well be others. Diagnostic report, imaging report, pathology report, etc. Service request, I think, is where they're requesting work. TDG or work group has put this already. And I do think that, and this is one I've wrestled with for a while, many wrestle with, is whether or not to actually put it on patient at all. Initially, I was quite opposed to this, but I have sort of come around from a practicality perspective that it's probably okay, as long as there's some clear guidance on when and how people should do that. So that's the first part. The second part is to add general guidance, as we have for things like gender identity, pronouns, and RSG on the sex and gender page. So we'd have a section on SPCU to provide additional guidance. The next point ties into associating SPCU with AU-based patient, and that is it's probably not a bad idea to consider mandating a value for the comment attribute through a constraint, which then establishes what the clinical context for including it in an area or in a resource where that context is not clear. So whereas if you put SPCU on medication request, it's pretty clear that what you're prescribing has some relationship to the sex category of the patient. But if you put it on patient and that's encountered in the wild, it's the context of the clinical context for SPCU there is really unclear. And you can address that with a comment attribute. And just for everyone's information, I am pursuing a change request with the patient administration work group to actually add an intended clinical use attribute to this extension in future, which will be at this stage probably a 0 to many codable concept and potentially a reference to a clinical use definition resource. So I'm still working out the details of that. But for now, I think the comment is probably acceptable. And then finally, we may need to consider whether there are any, if this proposal is accepted, whether there's any consequential changes for the eRequesting FHIR AG, whether that's required or not. So I hope that, yep. Go ahead.
Ruben, I do have a question. So in the first can you go back to the slide here? In the first bullet point where you have explicitly add the extensions to a number of profiles. Now, assuming that if we add it to the AU-based patient, and all the other profiles actually needs to have the AU-based patient in it. So are you saying that you also, given this bullet point, that we also add the extension to all the other profiles, like diagnostic report, imaging report, pathology report, etc. And if that's the case, where do you put it?
You put it on those resources themselves, on diagnostic report itself. So sorry, I should have clarified the FHIR extension as a context of any resource. So that means any canonical or domain resource, you can apply it in those contexts. So that's obviously a pretty wide field, and thus you can apply it at the root of diagnostic report or pathology report, etc.
So in that case, then you are facing a situation of duplication of information or triplication or quadruple information. You have it in AU-based, and then you have it in the diagnostic request, and then you have it in diagnostic report. So that's already sort of a triple, triplications of the information. Why?
Well, I'm not saying you should do that. I'm saying that you should add it there because in those resource types, the clinical context is clear. And I also added underneath the list of bullet points that there should be clear guidance describing the use in those contexts. And in that guidance, you would say, if you've got it at the diagnostic report level, there's no reason to then also have it in a linked patient resource if there is one reference there.
I'm not particularly convinced with that argument, but let me talk that. I'll go to Daniel because Daniel has her hand up.
I think we've answered one of my questions, which was whether or not the extension applies at the root level, or if you could put it on particular elements. So that's answered.
It's got to be at the root, yeah.
Yeah. I think my other one is For me, I think the inclusion in AU base is all predicated on how well we do the guidance. Like including this without good guidance will lead to poor outcomes.
I agree.
But with good guidance, this would be good. So I would like to say that I think this is reasonable and worthwhile, but I'd like to see a draft of the guidance that is kind of what's our
Yep.
positioning for this before I would approve.
Yep,
Right.
that's reasonable. I guess
Michael Wilson.
Yeah, I'm very supportive of this because we're currently wearing the burden of it in eRequesting. And we're going to have to fine-tune our guidance and our implementation approach for this. And to me, it makes much more sense to be in AU base because we don't want to do something in eRequesting that then another more specific use case does another approach. To me, this is something I would much rather solve at AU base that then applies to eRequesting and any other IG in a consistent way. So I'm definitely very supportive of this.
Right.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, I think some guidance would be helpful in the sex and gender guidance pages to explain that exists and usage. I can certainly see just from implementers kind of usage perspective, obviously with the service request usage, we have evidence of people wanting and needing that. I'm not aware of any systems applying that kind of concept anywhere else. Whilst it's yeah.
I can advise that the pathology report implementation guide from HL7 Europe, which is currently transitioning to HL7 International, has introduced it. It just as with one other example there, Brett.
Yeah, okay.
Which, just following up on that, was probably also going to the guidance, because obviously there's like reference range and the ability to say that the reference range I use was this biological sex related one. So I think and I guess that was also one of my questions that I was hoping to look for in guidance around when you use SPCU at the root level versus when you might actually be explaining how you've interpreted these results using some of the reference range elements.
Sorry, I got lost halfway through that, Danielle. So if
reference
you just can
ranges.
repeat that.
Reference ranges
Okay.
can, I think, be equivalent to saying, here's my sex parameter for clinical use. And I think in reports in particular, and like the results and reporting ones, those to me have almost a competing element that is native that I think we would need to be really clear about when you might use SPCU as opposed to the native reference range qualifier.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. I'm happy to pick that one up with the pathology SMEs. Right, if there's any concern there, I think we should address it.
Right. We are at time, so I'm going to entertain two more sort of comments or discussion, and then we have to move on.
Yeah, I have some issues with guidance around, and until there's really clear international guidance on referencing SPCU from patient, I find it problematic, and we kind of need agreed context definitions. I think. I think there's not much.
So you don't.
I don't think there's a lot of point unless you're going to have coding.
Yeah,
of
look,
context
and that's
defined.
that may well be possible. If, as I said, that proposal I have, which I've already confirmed with the gender harmony co-chairs, is a good idea.
Yeah, because it becomes kind of like a default SPCU.
Well, you see, this is this is why I was in the interim suggesting mandating that comment attribute be present to establish that clinical context if it is on patient.
Yeah, I mean that's fine from a descriptive sense, but kind of from a computable sense, I'd like to say
that's precisely
explicitly
why
when to
I'm
apply.
looking at. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
which
I'm
can
going
get
to
more complicated too, because I mean, the service requests will depend on type, right? maybe.
Yeah, that's
as
right.
well.
But I mean, fortunately, AU base doesn't have to go to town on dealing with a lot of those.
No.
The actual implementation guides that are use case specific will have to address those. But I'm gonna finish. Oh, do you have another comment from Michael?
I just wanted to highlight that if this is too much to bite off initially, we do have the requirement now for eRequesting and service requests.
Yeah.
So if there's opportunity to do this in a staged approach and we can get that in for this release as a minimum, I think that would be a good approach. If we can't bite it all off in one go, just as an alternative.
Understand.
I would
Thanks for that.
say one more thing, and then we'll have to close this topic and move on to the next one. So
Stephen, can we close this with actions though?
Yeah,
Sure.
I was about to summarize those.
Okay.
all right, so let me say one more thing, and then we'll close with action. So what I'm trying to say is that whether it's sex or gender or sex parameter for clinical use is a characteristic of a patient. So that's not point number one. And point number two, for that extensions to appear in multiple places, there is a recipe for confusion and disaster. But I want to see the actual proposal, and then we do need to discuss it further. So with that as a comment, let's sort of close this off with an action item. So what do we propose that Ruben do and as an action item before we pick it up for the discussion in the next or other upcoming meetings?
So look, I'm taking from this discussion that there is general support for this, subject to the guidance being acceptable. And so my actions will be to write up that guidance for the next meeting and provide an update on the introduction of a coded clinical context on the international extension.
Okay.
Could I further suggest that in support of eRequesting that like a second, I think maybe Michael, if you can spend some time with Ruben to have a, I don't know, like whether a fallback proposal or like the minimum kind of thing we could add to AU base if we can't get the entire proposal across the line.
Yep.
All right.
I'm open to that.
All right.
Okay, so that's good. Now let's close this topic and the remaining item, which I don't think that I need to share the screen, which is coverage terminology. So we have about 10 minutes for Michael. What's one? Is that your
Thanks,
item?
Stephen. Yeah, I'll share my screen if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Are we seeing
Yes, but can you
not
make
my
it a full
Spotify?
screen?
But is that okay? Is that big enough?
No,
We'll
too
make it
small, bigger.
Yeah, too small. Yeah.
You've clearly got
So-
a very large screen. Keep going.
It's only 27 inch. Okay. So I'm just harking back to the minutes from the 23rd of April, where I was asked to go away and come up with a proposal for how we represent public hospital billing and perhaps some other concepts for coverage type. So there was this Zillup chat where we polled, what types of coverage do we want in our system. There were some other examples. So Sabi came up with, NDIS, HCP, etc. Now, my original proposal, so what I originally came up with was, which one's this? Yeah, this is it here. So that we would split public poll into Medicare and Pub Hosp, and we would add a bunch of other codes. Now, when this went through primary review, Danielle said that this is actually a revisit from a previous meeting. So I've actually pared this right back to just asking for the public hospital code. And the reason I've done this is I had a meeting with Public Pathology Australia and Luke Semler, and he said that 50% of all pathology in Australia is done in a public hospital laboratory. And so I feel like there's actually a fair bit of, even though we're underrepresented, the public system at this meeting, I feel like we really do need that code. So what I've sort of come up with is just this single coverage type code system. Coverage type code system with a single code in it for public hospital, which we could build on at a later date. Now, just before Daniel jumps in, I'll just say that I think it needs to be a separate code system. It's not an extension of V3 Act code, because this would be subsumed by that public code, which definitionally says it's all types of public insurance, which includes jurisdictional state insurance and national insurance. So I think that code it might be okay to use for Medicare, just even though I don't like it. However, I do think it's distinct from this particular code. So my proposal is just to add this single code system. I think it's this code system with a single code in it. And so downstream OGs like eRequesting, they can add it into their value set. There was an additional, I was originally going to add it into a value set. And restrict what comes out of V3 Act code, but I've changed my proposal to just being this one code system. Now, I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
Can you bring up the
Yes.
value set that's currently bound to coverage type? And just run through for us so that we can confirm that this concept is unique. I think part of what I'm concerned about is, although the code is written as pub hosp and the display says public hospital, the definition says this is a state-funded Australian hospital. Like, how specific is this code that we're proposing? And if so, we're proposing something really specific, then the code and the display should match the semantics of just how precise a concept we're trying to convey.
Okay, so this is, I'll make that slightly bigger. This is the current value set. So it is, so let's look at its, it's a lot. Okay, I'm not sure that much of this applies to Australia.
No, lots of it doesn't.
Yeah.
Are there any similar-ish codes that this either quantifies or might possibly overlap with? I know obviously there's some sort of generic public one, and so there's a public poll, which is just very generic.
I'm not sure what happened then, but yeah, it's called pub poll, I think. Pub policy, public poll.
Yep.
Public poll, yeah. So this is the one that we've used for Medicare, and it says it's for, the examples are provincial health systems, and these are like states, and then it gives NHS, which is the UK's national health system. So it's clearly any sort of public insurance policy.
So in a sense, we're having a finer grained concept than that, and that is this much broader kind of concept. If it could be any of them, and the concept that's put forward would be subsumed by that higher level one, do you think?
It would be subsumed by the higher level one if we added as an extension to V3 Act code. And that's not what I'm proposing. I'm proposing it's a separate...
Outside of mechanics, just in real world, the kind of a concept.
In the real world, it would be subsumed by that, except that we've actually already given this a different meaning in Australia.
Okay.
And that's why I suggested originally retiring this code and making it ambiguous and using Medicare as a code. Yeah.
So in terms of binding strength, this currently sits at preferred. Is that right?
Correct.
And is that the same in the latest R6 ballot, that it's still at preferred and not extensible?
Correct.
Okay. Then I don't have a problem with us having a more specific code, because that works with the binding and I see what you're trying to do. I do still have questions about how generic the code seems, while the definition says, no, this is a state-funded Australian public hospital and only a state-funded Australian public hospital. Is that an example or meant to be the full semantic definition that it has to be sticking to?
I wanted to avoid talking about like the methods of so there's a scheme behind this which could change at any time. So I wanted to sort of be a little bit more generic about who's funding it and not about how it's funded. So it's an activity-weighted, activity-based funding, ABF. So that would be another option, is to say, oh, well, this is activity-based funding model.
That's possibly not where I'm going. I guess what I'm trying to pull out is the definition is very muchly specific, for example, even to Australia, but the display just says public hospital. So anyone who's got a funding of public hospital, any public hospital around the world, could expect to maybe use this code. But if we really mean
okay.
it, no, it's only Australian public hospitals, we need the display and the code to match up to how conceptually precise we're trying to do.
Yeah, I'm happy to make that modification. So if it's AU Pub Hosp and Australian Public Hospital, that's fine by me.
And so that is the intention, that we're adding a code. And I am just checking here again, because we might also then have New Zealand or other things like that, that this is specifically Australia, and other jurisdictions that are saying, who come in, maybe they're tourists or whatever else, that have a funded scheme, would use their own concept. They couldn't use this one.
It's in our domain though.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
It is not as though.
No, but we've defined in Australia international concepts before.
Yeah, I get Daniel's point. I think I am comfortable with that, given that there are a lot of jurisdictions internationally that have public hospital funding system. To cite a few, New Zealand, Singapore, Malaysia, etc. They do share similar type of thing, having
it's the system's defined as Australian context defined code system.
I don't actually agree with that one, Brett. We've used Australian stuff to define international ones. Yeah, I know. Well, actually, it doesn't. The title just says coverage type, which I also have a problem with. This is not just coverage types. It's actually quite specific. So I guess more of my issues with this are about how precise are we going, and having the code system title and description and the code itself reflect the intended precision.
I'd be okay with modifying the name to Australian coverage type. I just don't want it to overlap with it being an extension of V3 Act codes, because we would just get subsumed by that other public code. So yeah, I'm happy for all of those modifications.
All right, so we are at time, so we need to close this one. What's the final
could we
decision?
work on it? I will help Michael revise it and go through my concerns. Maybe we could do an e-vote. We could try for an e-vote, which can also be still refer to telecom. I don't know. Are there other comments from people on the line? I know I've taken a lot of airtime.
Well, I'm happy given that we are at time or we are a couple of minutes over time, I'm happy for your proposal, Danielle, for you to take it offline to work with Michael Osborne. And then if you want to launch a e-vote, that's fine, or otherwise come back to this call to close it out.
Okay, well, let's see if we can get an e-vote ready because I know the 16th has a lot of key decisions in it. So whatever we can do asynchronously would be of value.
Yeah, that'll be fine. Opening it for e-vote, hopefully you'll get more participation in the voting instead of constraining you to the number of participants at this call. So let's try that. So action item for Daniel and Michael Osborne to work on finalizing this value set. And then I launch a e-vote, and with the result bring to the next or the meeting after next for closing it out. All right, are we okay with that?
Yep. Thank you.
All right, with that, I think we are 2 minutes over time. I think we can wrap up this meeting. The next meeting is in 2 weeks' time. We have draft meeting agenda sort of on the conference page. So we will return on the 16th of July for the next round of discussions. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
With that, I think we can close this meeting.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you. I need to find a way to
Thanks,
stop the
David.
recording.
I can do.